Hello, everyone. It's Michael Jaco with Unleashing Intuition Secrets. We have Rachel Rodriguez running for governor of Florida. Wow, what an amazing background she has, and she's going to talk about that. And she is the type of person that we all want for governor, guys. So I'm very happy to have her on to talk about that, because we all know that we have a real massive problem with leadership and governorship, and she is definitely the one that we want to get in there and start to change things and be the example for everywhere else. So thanks so much, Rachel and Marcus in background joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Wow. Yeah, running for governor and your background, you're helping a lot of people in your practice as a lawyer. So this is fantastic. Give us a little background, sure. Where you came from and how you came to the United States and your upbringing and all that stuff is fascinating.
Well, absolutely. So I was actually born here, but you're right. My mother was a refugee from Cuba in the 60s. And also I brought my husband here in 2009 from Cuba on a fiance visa. You know, the Bible says to go and be fishers of men. So I went to Cuba and I fished. And I'm very glad that the Lord did that. So I'm here in West Palm Beach, Florida. And I've been in Florida for going on 13 years. And we have 3 little ones. And I do have a robust private practice. I have been a litigator for about 20 years now. And really what happened is, when COVID hit, I was already practicing a lot of federal law work on, sort of your general civil litigation, right? It's your businesses. I was helping small businesses to move forward. I was defending people in intellectual property issues. I'm also bilingual. And so, I was doing immigration work. And then when COVID came, it was very obvious to me. I couldn't believe it wasn't obvious to other people, but it was very obvious to me that we were in a massive civil rights, steamrolling of civil rights. We're not even talking a few violations. This was a coordinated mass violation. And I thought for sure the rest of my profession would agree. And unfortunately, Michael, what I found is that my profession was, in fact, assisting bad actors to, in fact, steamroll over civil rights. And, I don't know if you recall the whole my body, my choice for a couple of decades, and then all of a sudden it disappeared.
Right. Apparently,
our bodies are not our choice when it's actually our bodies, as opposed to the life that God has placed in women. And it's just extraordinary. And I thought for sure, well, we're going to be able to handle this in the courts. And we were not. I was shocked to find, I can't believe I was shocked after so many years practicing, but it did surprise me to see that I was mostly in federal courts, but also state courts across the board, with very few exceptions all around the nation. We're rubber stamping the biggest, most egregious individual rights and liberties violation I have ever seen or heard of. And of course, it was a global scale. I have met my colleagues around the world fighting for the same human and individual rights that are given to us by God, frankly: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All 3 were steamrolled. And so at a certain point when I was asked to run for governor, I realized, and some of my colleagues in this fight, there's very few of us, but a few hundred in this country, we've all discussed the fact that politics is the next step for us if we're going to keep fighting. And so that's why I'm here, is to continue to serving the people of Florida, understanding the existential threats that are here for us. So that's how I got here.
Yeah, fantastic. During the COVID era, I was, the beginning of it anyway, I was in California and Lake Tahoe. I'm back in Lake Tahoe now, but I'm in Nevada side. So California is off limits for me. So
Gotcha.
they're one of the most egregious, going against, human rights and so forth. So right. I got tired of it. So I moved to Florida. Florida was one of the best ones in the early stages.
Yeah.
Tell us about, how did that happen?
Well, to be honest, in part, that was some of the work my clients were doing and the lawsuit we filed in Orange County. But that was together with a handful of us in the grassroots here in Florida who all saw what I did, and we said, we're not going to do this. And so now looking back, one of the sparks that ignited the grassroots here in Florida to protect medical freedom is a rally that was held at the Capitol. In the Capitol, there's like a courtyard between the old building and the new building in Tallahassee. And we held a rally there. And I don't remember how many hundred people were there, but it was several hundred. And we were giving speeches, and we were right there in front of the legislators to tell them, you've got to understand what's happening and protect the people. There was a special session that was going to come right after that in November, and we were pushing for legislation that would protect us from the mandates. I don't recall when it was that you came, but that's when we started to move away from, oh, this is a crisis, we have to follow what everybody thinks, to, oh no, we're not going that direction. And so my clients at that time were parents in Orange County and firefighters and first responders in Orange County who had said, we are not taking, on the firefighter side, they were saying, we're not taking any medical treatment that we do not want to take. We can ask for an exemption on a religious beliefs or on the basis of disability accommodations. We can ask for that. And on the other end, the parents were saying, no, we're not masking our children. It just so happens, Michael, that at that time, there had been, I believe it had been passed, I don't want to be quoted on this, but I believe it had been passed just prior in March to say, okay, no one on public property should be required to demonstrate their vaccine status in order to enter public buildings. But that's as far as it went, because it was still a question of whether there's going to be mandates federally or not. That was sort of in that moment. And so we sued in the state court under that law, saying these are public employees, so they should not be required to show a vaccine status in order to go to work. And the state of Florida entered an amicus brief, meaning a friend of the court brief, saying we agree with the plaintiff's position on the law. That was A.G. Moody at the time, now Senator Moody. And they came into the state and said, yes, that is what the law means. That's how it should be applied here. And so we did that, and that became a political pressure point and cover point for the legislators then to go all the way and say no mandates. And if private employers are seeking to put mandates in place, you must allow for accommodations on 5 grounds. And that included a little bit more than the religion and the disability. It also included, for example, conscience position. So it's a long answer, but that's a lot of what was happening at the time. But I will say one other thing. It was scary for a bit there, because at the very beginning, the legislators, I think it was in 2020, put in place a law that gave additional state protections to the hospitals and to the medical providers if any malpractice claims were made, wrongful death, et cetera, based on COVID. So you had the PrEP Act that most of your viewers probably are familiar with on the federal level, that shielded all kinds of action by those who were making shots, those who were giving medical care, allegedly medical care, under COVID protocols, et cetera. But our state, Florida, actually lowered the time frame that you had to bring a claim to 1 year instead of the 2, which is general for all malpractice claims, and gave additional shields. So I think it was 80,000 people that I will say this based on the evidence, were murdered in the hospitals. And that was under the protection or the liability protection of Florida law. So we had to work our way into where we are today in the free state of Florida.
Oh my God, unbelievable. So I always thought it was DeSantis, but it sounds like it was pressure from you guys that really was the impetus of Florida becoming free. And then everybody's like, Florida's free, we're going to Florida, we're out of these other states that are restricting. Is that actually the case?
I will say we worked together. DeSantis did not work against what the grassroots were doing in general part. And I would say also for the part of the legislature, I want to give credit where credit is due.
Excellent.
We pushed forward, but I will say there's more to be done. And as I often say on the campaign trail, my concern is that, in fact, with what I know about the courts being utterly useless to their actual covenant to the people and their constitutional duty, and seeing how the legislature needs to be pressured into the right thing, their instincts aren't always correct, and they don't always speak for us, even here in Florida, I would say we're one Marxist or apathetic executive away from losing everything that people understand to be the free state of Florida. So I think the stakes are very high, and I'm not doing that for fear mongering. That is exactly what I see from my vantage point.
I agree with you, unfortunately. And, you know, DeSantis was very aggressive, just like a lot of other governors in the beginning, you know, on lockdown and so forth. So it did turn very quickly. So
yes,
that's the grassroots type of stuff. And
that's right.
The grassroots stuff that really makes an impact. So thank you for doing that.
Sure.
Now, I love that Rachel, you're a lawyer and you're speaking out. I've had several other people that have spoken out. That's this one woman that has come on that was a nurse up in Tennessee that said that hospitals were murdering people.
Oh yeah.
You just said it, and you're a lawyer.
Yeah, I did.
Good job. Wow. This is the kind of leadership that I'm talking about. We need, guys.
Well, thanks. I want to say one thing about what you said before, and this is very, very critical, and I think people need to hear this. Our system of government, and frankly, I think the best type of government, is that which is the people self-governing and holding their leaders accountable. So exactly what you described, where maybe at the beginning our leaders didn't quite understand, but the people rose up and said, this is how it goes. And then the leadership follows that, is at least our second best. I think our first best is the leaders seeing the existential threat ahead and saying, this is what we need to do, and talking with the people and saying, we're all going to do this together. But second best is that the people say, look, you're leading at our consent, and this is what we need to do. And then the leadership following suit. So that's an important point. We need to recover that in this country and even in this state. I'll tell you another thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me butt in for a sec. So that's true. It should be that way. But the corruption and the payoffs of people, you know, that are in positions of power or whatever, they want to get elected, they're making money, who knows what reason. Big Pharma does all kinds of things to keep their money-making machine going, as we all saw and see. But, you know, so it's how do you get the right people in the right position so that corruption isn't holding it back? Because like you said, there should have been a 2-year kind of normal statute, and then they went to 1 year. Well, why did they do that? Because the lobbyists and the Big Pharma didn't want to get sued, and they should have gotten sued, in the hospitals and all the people that did those corrupt, really evil things. Because I don't think people understand even a level, when you say murder people, like you told me kind of the details of how that played out. And like, it's, you know, as a human being, you just see like, how can people do that to other people, you know, for profit? So I don't know.
Well, and to that, so there's a couple of questions in there, of course, right? How do we get those people? Well, I'll tell you, it's extremely difficult to run for office. You need people to support you and to move your case. You cannot raise a campaign on your own. I can't go out there and just tell people, I'm a great person, don't you want me for governor? People have to come around and say, I know what Rachel has done. I know what her team has done. I know what she does in the dark, in the wee hours of the morning, when nobody's watching, without name recognition. This is what you need. You have to have the people come around and do that. It takes a lot of energy and effort from everyone. And so I'm very grateful for the people that are supporting me and the volunteers who have seen the work that I've done and what my team has done. And they understand that I'm going to do the exact same thing in Tallahassee. And to that end, the other point that I think is critical for your listeners to know about, my team has sought criminal investigation and prosecution because of the part of what I call the COVID criminal enterprise that was the hospital homicide. And what we did, because there's an entire enterprise, there is a RICO situation here. It's racketeering, organized criminal activity for profit, and all the evidence is there. Now, does everybody that ended up being sucked into that vortex knowingly doing what they were doing or understand all of it? No, I'm not placing moral blame on every single person, because part of this whole enterprise was to get all of us as the people involved. You know, we were terrorized. We were, programmed and terrorized into certain actions, which, by the way, is one of the crimes, I think, under state code, domestic terrorism, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But we do have to hold them accountable now. We've seen it now. There's enough evidence now. And what we've done is in 7 states, we started in Florida and we've gone to 6 others. We have submitted briefs. I call them briefs because they're not complaints. I can't open a criminal action as a non-prosecutor, as a private attorney. But we have sought from attorneys general and from district attorneys, depending on the jurisdiction in that state, the investigation and prosecution of these crimes, but very specific to the victims in the hospitals. Very few survive, but some of the victims that we have brought together who have said, I'm willing to testify and I'm going to put my name in this brief as one of the victims. Some of them are our survivors of the hospital protocols. And so what we did in our team is we looked at the criminal code, because the PrEP Act stops civil claims, except for, I think it's willful and reckless. There's a particular standard in the PrEP Act, pardon me for my lack of recollection, but you can prosecute, despite the PrEP Act making cover, for intentional acts. I think it's, willful acts that cause injury, and of course, it does not shield criminal liability. And people were very concerned about at the time we started this, Biden was still in office, so allegedly. So I wasn't expecting the federal government to go after this. So I said, let's go to the states. The states have plenary power under the criminal code of that state to deal with their own people for crimes in their own state. And so we went state to state looking for victims and saying, what's your story? We vetted their story. We put their information together, and then we put together a brief saying, this is the jurisdiction, meaning the authority you have as a prosecutor in your state. Here's what we think the crimes are, and here's all the evidence. And of course, that has just evolved and increased as time has gone on. And as I said, we've filed or submitted in 6 other states, including Florida, and resubmitted to James Uthmeyer, who, by the way, is running for re-election, has not responded at all to it. Here in Florida, we did that last year. And I'm pleased to say that in Texas and in Arizona, we were able to open criminal investigations. We have not seen that move forward to prosecutions yet, but I think that's a really, really huge win. What it says to the people is that we can do this. It takes tenacity, but we can. And so I think we need to continue to pursue that in even more states. We are working on other states as well and using this as pressure, like in Oklahoma, on officials that are trying to get elected or re-elected, and we're trying to say, what did you do with this? Did you deal with the tens of thousands of people in your state who were murdered in the hospitals? So
I have a Todd calendar up. I've done shows with Todd, and
he's great.
He's like you. He's a go-getter. He gets things done. So, he has saved a lot of people. This one lady that came in and revealed quite a lot of things about the vaccination that were where they had luciferase in it, and she and her team saw that. She tried to bring that up to the public, which she did, and then she had to run for her life pretty much. And Todd saved her. So you guys are really the cutting edge. Now it's not just about the COVID. You are also doing First Amendment type stuff. And
that's really right.
That. Wow. Well, I lost 17 channels in YouTube.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And when was that? Was that about 2017-ish?
No, I started right. It's pretty much 2021 is when I started them, because I was really pushing everybody to be informed about the COVID lie. And
thank you for that.
Yeah, well, thank you, because obviously you made a space for us in Florida so that we could come and continue.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah, I do. I would say it's more because First Amendment really deals with government limiting speech. But what's ended up happening, all of this started, how I got involved in knowing the people, God orchestrates all these things, knowing the people to then get into the fight against COVID instead of just being all by myself out there. it started because I started a nonprofit in trying to deal with what I saw as the shadow banning and the censorship on private platforms. We now know, of course, that they're basically state actors, and we all figured that back at the time, because it doesn't take rocket scientists to figure that out. But you have to be able to prove it in court in order to be able to use First Amendment protections, RFRA and other things like that. And so I came up with a plan and wrote a white paper on how we could actually use litigation. Now, mind you, I'm sure most litigators, for them, they're a hammer, everything is a nail, and you've got to fix it with litigation. I actually don't believe that. I think, strategically speaking, you have to understand what it is you're trying to get to. And maybe a lawsuit will work. Maybe that's not. Maybe the lawsuit is the teeth that goes along with the publicity, because a bad actor really just cares about their image. But in this particular case, it was litigation, because the problem that we had with Section 330, which is essentially it was a protection for the nascent internet back however many decades ago, to say, okay, we don't want to have this burgeoning new technology shut down immediately because of content that people find egregious or violative of people's rights. And so I understand that concept, but what ended up happening, especially in two of the circuits, and I won't go too much into legalese, but two of the federal circuits just basically allowed tech platforms to do whatever they wanted, way outside the realm of protecting the internet.
Yep.
And so as a result of that, that paved the way. That is the basis for which everybody who is a conservative content creator in the 20 teens, ended up losing everything. In fact, I spoke with Alfonso Rachel. I don't know if you remember Zone. I think it's Zonation, and he's an incredible musician, a brilliant conservative commentator, and he lost his show and all that, and people didn't believe him at the time because he was one of the canaries in the coal mine. And shortly after that, we saw just a spate of people losing everything, and they couldn't get back on. And then it culminated, maybe not culminated, but became very obvious when the sitting president was shut out from his social media. And I hate to say it, but that has not been resolved. Like the COVID violations, we as a nation have not held to account the people who said, yeah, okay, First Amendment, but only for us, or First Amendment, but only for the things we think should be said. They're confusing moral character and the way you speak with your right legally to speak. And we have that problem here. So I mentioned before we started that I am representing Roseanne Barr, because she was one of the ones in Hollywood who had the guts to stand up and say what needed to be said, politically and otherwise. And she was giving an incredible message of unity at a time of deep division with Trump's first election. So her show, I don't know if anybody remembers, but the show at that time was demonstrating that people of differing, in one family, people of differing religious beliefs, not religious beliefs, excuse me, political beliefs, could love one another as a family while differing. And I think that message was very dangerous to the division that was being sown through media, through politics, and so forth. And so those are the kind of things that I'm working to protect, because I think it's essential to order and to rule of law and to our liberties.
Yeah, absolutely. And the tie-in that we're talking about, we started with COVID, but it's also a tie-in to the First Amendment rights as well, because they were shutting us down from informing each other of problems with the COVID and the COVID vaccine and so forth. And that was part of a larger conspiracy like we're talking about. So how incredible it would be for someone to be in a really a powerful position as a governor, just to really start to press these issues that seem to be dragging along and not getting any traction to a great extent. But it seems like you are getting some traction in other states now. So that's great. Thank you.
Well, we have, and certainly one of the things I knew would be a win-win for this campaign is, come what may, in the actual election, this is a platform that's extremely difficult to build on your own. You know this because of the hard work you've done to build your channels and then and rebuild. And so I said, this is a platform where I get to speak directly to people who may not understand the things I've seen, who don't necessarily know or wouldn't have a way to know the systemic rot that I've seen and how it is in all the systems. Because one of the things I've noted because for everybody to know, I've never run for an office before. And so I'm coming in as essentially a political layperson. I've done a lot of things adjacent to politics, as we're talking about. I even sued the Republican Party of Florida because they were kicking people out of their executive committees and voiding elections, which I thought was a no-no. And I like to hold anybody who's doing naughty things accountable. But one of the things I've seen in the campaign is, people need to know that as the people, they can bring these things to their elected officials. They need to know. Also, one thing I'll break in this. One thing that's one of the pillars of my campaign is to reform the courts. I've been talking about that, and that's something I know very, very well. But I've had people come up to me during the campaign and they say, I need to hear a little bit more about this. People still think that the third branch of government is going to hold things in balance. And they need to know whether or not I'm able to serve the people as the executive. They need to know that this is an issue, and it's an issue that I can raise, and the other candidates aren't necessarily working in litigation, of course. And it's something that I can bring to their attention. So to me, that's a win for the people, because at the very least, I get to serve them by raising these issues and hopefully getting other candidates to talk about it as well.
Well, hey, Rachel, Michael had Ron Bouchard, and I was on a couple podcasts last week. Now, Michael, Rachel and Ron get along fantastically because they understand this at the foundational level. And she is it's really important, I think, that she gets elected governor because she does understand the real God's law, common law, and constitutional, where everything fits into its right place. And so just to know that they're in alignment, they understand this.
Very good. And you've covered a couple of your R's. You get the 5 R's.
Yes, I have.
Relieve working families. Now, the first line in Restore Health Freedom, I'll penalize mandates. It's like, wow, that's one of the things that really locked us down and crushed us as a society in the world, really.
That's right.
Go ahead.
No, that's absolutely right. And one thing that we did get in the special session in 2021, what was called the Private Employer Vaccine Mandate Program, VEMP, if you want to put it that way. And I thought, this is great. We're dealing with the public employers from the constitutional standpoint, which was easier to deal with. And then on the private sector side, if they violate the state law, then this is available. So I sent a few of my clients through that process and litigated essentially through that investigation. I was very disappointed, and I hate to say it, but I think this is on the Attorney General's lap, so I'm going to call it out. It was A.G. Moody at the time. But these investigations were not finding any of the employers in violation. And I was managing the evidence on these cases and bringing them to the federal court. Clearly, the private employers were violating the law. And yet the agency was just not finding it. In fact, one of the most bizarre points or stories was that my client had been fired by Disney. So Disney was one of the employers I sued in 2022. And he had been terminated by Disney, but in June. By September, when the decision came back from the agency, this is the PEVMP agency, they said, well, we have no evidence that he was ever fired in September. So I'm like, then you didn't even look at anything, because I presented that to you. At the time, we immediately, right when we filed, he was right on the cusp of being fired, but then we put in the information he was fired. So at the very least, they didn't ever contact the employer because they would have found out he was fired. So these are the kind of things that are happening. We can't add legislation and we're tough on crime. We're tough on violations. And then no enforcement's happening. And that lies directly with the executive. I want to, Michael, I want to point out what I think is the top of the 5 R's for me, because of what I've seen, especially dealing now with the campaign, and that is reclaiming parental rights.
Ooh, yeah.
It's not what we think it is in Florida. And I'm going to give you a story from this weekend that just happened yesterday. I have 4 stories, but I'll keep it brief to this one. And I'm going to anonymize it because I don't want to draw attention to the family right now who are grieving. But I got a call on Saturday night, late, and a hospital, I'll call out the hospital, that's Newmore's Children's Hospital, was pressuring a family. Now, it was an accident, okay, fatal accident at this point, but it had only happened a few days prior. And it's a baby, not even 2 years old. And what happened was, within only a couple of days, the hospital is coming and coming and coming and coming. The administrators, we want to do this test. We want to do this test. Well, what was the test? I understand it to be an apnea test. Now, I'm not a medical professional, so, I'm not going to go there, but I think it's an apnea test, and it's essentially to determine whether there is brain activity. So you know where that's going, brain death, so-called. And the hospital's pressuring that, and has even informed the family that once we do the test, we make a declaration as to whether there's any brain activity, and then from there you'll have, I think it was 2 hours to say goodbye, and we'll pull the machines. Excuse me, this is the state of Florida where there's a parental bill of rights. Do I not, thinking from the parent's perspective, do I not get a right to say whether I want these tests done? And then after the test, you get to declare what's going on with my child, not God. God isn't declaring the days of my child, you are. And then from there, you're going to be unplugging my child. What is that? Well, I'll tell you what it is. According to Dr. A, I'll be very nice, at the hospital, who's the medical director in the PICU. I heard on the phone from her, it's the standard of care, Michael. So the standard of care is to decide when the person dies and then kill them by unplugging machines instead of waiting to see about brain swelling and this and that and the other. And especially with children, brain death is not a linear thing. Even if we were to accept it as something we consider, because there's a lot of turmoil around that. But even if we did, with children, it's very different than with adults because children's bodies are growing in a way that ours no longer are. And brain injuries and those kinds of things. I mean, you have tons of stories, honestly, of children who've had traumatic injuries who later regain all function or a lot of function, but it takes some time. And so this was an egregious affront, not only to parental rights and to the rule of law in Florida, but it was disgusting. You have parents that are grieving at this moment. It's the darkest moment of their lives, and you're in there every other hour or whatever, trying to decide for them to play God in this role. And that's got to stop. The medical profession has forgotten its moral duty, just like the courts have done. And
Rachel, tell them about the DCFS too.
Well, actually, in this case, because of the accident, DCF was already at their house. I didn't tell you that part, Marcus.
Wow.
So every time, this is the thing. You cannot simultaneously say that human life is exceptional, which I say it's created in the image of God and therefore precious as a moral matter from conception to natural death. You can't hold that human life is precious and there's a violation somewhere. If something happens, there's injury or death, i.e. DCF comes and starts sniffing around. And at the same time, in the same overall structural systems, treat that human life like cattle to decide when it ends. Those two things are incompatible. And that's the situation we currently have today. I'll take another example. Her story is public, so I can use her name. So the Zuroff family were fighting in court for 2 years. I got that call in December from Children's Health Defense, actually. And a couple days before the hearing in December, and her daughter had been taken from her because her daughter has cystic fibrosis, and she wanted a second opinion about medication for cystic fibrosis that had a black box warning. Now, for everybody who, I didn't fully know this until I started looking at this, but a black box warning means that it could, one of the side effects is that it could kill you. That's fun. This little girl was 5 at the time. So I think she did what any of us parents would do, our 5-year-old taking medication that might be lethal for, you know, when there's other medications. Oh, and by the way, I'm sure you can guess, Michael, that this medication was heavily subsidized and was, you know, the medication that the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation or whatever it's called wanted to push, right? Anyways, this mom wanted a second opinion. And because of that, the medical provider made a claim to DCF.
Wow.
And on that basis, the child was taken away.
Good God.
Who knows what probable cause was? Oh, but her story, I wish I could say this to your audience and to you, that it was rare. But based on dealing in these scenarios and then hearing the stories of these parents, it's not. And it's not rare in Florida, which is sickening to me. And it's got to stop. I look at things from a first principles position. We have a lot of legislation, a lot of it, but we have to stop playing Jenga with legislation. Oh, let's pull this out. It's bad. Oh, it's going to tip. We'll put this other one on top of here. And, you know, and eventually the thing's going to fall over. What you need to do is look at all of this from a first principles standpoint and say, does this law consume people, their livelihood, their flesh, their energy, their money, their productivity? Is it consuming people, or is it allowing them to flourish and be abundant and productive? That's the pursuit of happiness. If we look at things from that perspective, and we're looking holistically, we can drastically cut a lot of the laws that we have in Florida and force the ones that make sense, that don't consume people, that are leading to life and abundance and flourishing. And we'll completely upend the way things have been done before. And so I look at DCF, and I'll tell you with this, and I can go on forever. Sorry. I'll say this, that DCF's budget is tied. So how much they get, state and federal, is tied to how many children are taken out of homes. Now, wow. That sounds, that's horrible. Well, now, when they're in the room talking about the budget, that's not how it goes. I'm not assuming everybody's malicious, okay? That would be silly. But obviously, the cost comes in when the state now has to carry the cost of the child, not the parents and their family, right? So obviously, it's tied to that. But what happens with the things you subsidize? You get more of everything that you subsidize. You get less of what you tax. And what are we doing at the state, county, federal level? We tax productivity. We take the dollar as it's being produced, so we get less productivity. We subsidize children being taken out of homes. So what happens? You get more children taken out of homes, so you can get more of that dollar. This is the problem. This is a systemic problem. I dare say paradigmatic problem, if I can use legalese. But these are the things I'm seeing, and I want to be able to express that to the people of Florida and say, we can do something about this as the people, but we need to know these things, and we need to look at the candidates that are running. Do they understand these things, or are they playing Jenga, right? Mm-hmm. And are they going to have are they going to have the testicular fortitude to get something done about it? And I would say the way that you can see that is, what have they done? Not what they're saying they're going to do, but look at their record. Have they been tested? Have they been tried? Have they suffered for what they're believing and what they're saying now? If they've been through the fire and they've been able to do it, then I think they'll be able to do it in office.
This is fantastic. So I highly recommend that people donate to you. I donated to you, and I'm not in Florida, but we want the right people to get into public office, guys. Support Rachel the best you can, and at least share this and pass it around so we can get this message out there, so she can get the views that she needs to move forward. We're going to pass you on to Rodriguez and McKay as well. So Tracy just told me she's already talked to him while we're talking. So this is like you talk about grassroots methods are very, very effective. I've been very effective in a lot of, when I was in the military, when I was in the CIA, it doesn't matter. You can be very effective in grassroots movements, very effective.
Yes.
Like you're talking about, the system has failed us. So you can't work within the system. Sometimes you have to like work around it and then bring everybody to start to really focus on this like you're doing right now. Wow. So you're also looking at the fraud for working families. So it's all tied together as you're talking. I'm like, I see how this all ties together.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Well, I'm glad you can as I'm talking, because this is what I do want people to see, is that all of these things come together, but not to scare people, not to say, oh gosh, what are we going to do about it? But like you said, understand that you're a moral agent. God has given you, I say it this way, humans are the value on this earth, and of course the creation and what we can do with it. But we are the ones who have value. Money isn't the value. It's a measure. It just measures things. But we are the value, and people have to reclaim that. They have to understand that your energy, your productivity, your innovation, your discovery of things is what has value. And we need to promote, from the government standpoint, I think the government needs to understand that, number one, and then get out of the way of those who are trying to produce. The government gives the guardrails. I mean, the moral obligation of government is the sword, right? It's to protect from threats within and without for the people within that jurisdiction where that authority is. And otherwise, promote the productivity of the people. Don't get in the way. Don't become a parasite on the people and drag them down and consume them. And that's what fraud does. That's what fraud does. I mean, we started taxing people's productivity. Then we started taxing their good decisions. I think property tax is essentially a tax on a good decision, right? Yeah. I decided, instead of spending my money on one, and I'm not trying to make judgment calls on how people spend their money. What I'm saying is, essentially, this is how I see it. I decided to invest. And now that investment is not only going to cost me at the point of investment, but a good decision that is a great investment is going to tax me all the way up. To me, that's a dollar being produced. Maybe it's passively produced, but I had to make the decision. I had to choose between one or the other, or many things, in how I spent that money. It's the same thing for a business owner, right? When they decide to buy inventory, or they decide to go to school, or they decide any of those investments in who they are or their business is a prudent position. And they've decided to do that, and they've taken on the risk of doing that. And then we're taxing them for it if it's a successful thing. Yeah. And this has got to stop. That's how I look at all fiscal
Thank you.
policies.
Yeah, that's crazy. And Florida, one of the few states that is trying to take out the property tax. We know there's fraud there on a massive scale.
Well, the insurance is a problem there, I think. And
yeah, absolutely.
We need to deal with the insurance as well as the property tax.
Very good.
And then we need to talk about homeowners associations, right? Because that's taking people's, it's all consumption. Do you see why I've used that line? It's like, it's all consumption, and we need to start holding accountable that which consumes. That's how I see it.
Absolutely. And last we'll focus on is Florida's land. Now, hurricanes come through and they cause destruction. That's a given in Florida. We all know that happens, and we recover. We move on. But and this is one of the things. This is why I left Florida, because of the Hurricane Helene when it came through.
Yeah.
The destruction. But the city of Madeira Beach, where we were at the time, did not get our trash from the street side for months, and they wouldn't even let us come in and dump it. So we're stuck with it, and people lost their homes because they couldn't get in and start to fix them. It was like every week there was another home being torn down in my neighborhood. It was very frustrating. And we learned that the pollution facilities, or the pollution was over the top because of the where they do the waste was overflowing, and it was going into the water. And so, I had some problems. So I'm like, to survive, I got to leave. I love Florida, but there's this, the city and the filth and so forth. We got to go. And who knows what the next hurricane is going to do, because they didn't plan or operate good for this last one. 2 of them in a row, because we had
you're right.
Helene and the other one that came through was even more massive, but fortunately before it hit, it calmed down. So we got hit pretty hard, but that wasn't an issue. It was the unfortunate things that happened with the city. Now in a favor of DeSantis, he came in and basically sent some people down. They cut the locks so that we start to dump our trash. And then, came in and made sure that people started getting recompense for their insurance, which we never did. But there was a lot of that happened, during that time frame.
You need Rachel.
Well, I was going to say, you touched on several things there that first of all, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry that you went through that, and that you really haven't been, as you said, you haven't been paid back for what was lost. And I think what you describe is exactly why I started thinking about things this way. Why would the government, in this case, the local government, why was it impeding individual initiative?
Yes.
Why? Well, I know why, but what I'm saying is this is what the government must not do, where it's productive towards a particular end. Yes, you want to impede certain productivity in criminal, activities and that kind of thing. But I'm saying in general, the government should come alongside the people and say, oh, I see that you've got this. We're going to support this. Now, disaster relief is a different entity, because that is within the purview. I think that's the government's job to protect its citizens from threats, right? These are things that we call them force majeure in the law, right? It's something that's way beyond the control of anybody. You can't see it, allegedly. And so the government's position is to be a backstop for the people and their preparation. And I think one of the things that does need to happen in Florida, I was looking into this issue, and a lot of the infrastructure that's there for disaster relief is a bit outdated. I think there's a lot of technological advances that we can employ. And there's also just being all together in preparedness. Look, it's something that Florida deals with basically every year. We have to think about this issue. And so it's something that I think that people would absolutely agree that their tax dollars should be going towards it. To me, it's right within the purview of what the government should be doing. But another thing that you pointed out that I wanted to say, and that is the role of how government interacts, not only with the people, but with other levels of government. It's my understanding, morally speaking, and within our constitutional republic, that the base foundation governmental block, as well as the societal block, is the family. Now, within that family, we have individual rights. That's something that's very critical to our understanding, but the family is the block. And then from the family, those families form a larger structure, which is your community and governance within that community. And then it builds up from there. So the strongest should be the bottom, not the top. But these interplaying governmental authorities should be there to hold each other accountable within the guardrails of where their authority lies. And so that's exactly what DeSantis did. He said, look, as a local municipality, you're harming the people. You're not doing the job of the government, which is to protect them and assist them in this disaster. Therefore, we're going to right that ship. And I think that's the interplay that the state and the local municipalities should have. I think that one of the things we have seen in Florida is a bit of concern where the state sees a problem and they want to do something. They want to fix the thing, and maybe doing so from the state level is not the prudent option. And in fact, what needs to happen is more, I don't want to say dialogue, but a smidge of pressure for the localities to man up and do what they need to do, but specific to that local environment. Your agricultural, not municipal, but the county governments are going to have very different needs for the community than the municipal ones. So these are the kind of things that I think the state government, and I'm thinking about this as bidding for the executive of the state, is how to support without overriding, except in the area where there needs to be an accountability held.
Excellent. You're so informed on all these different points. It's incredible to me. I've never seen anybody so informed. Quite honest. And I've had a lot of people on that I've supported, and going up for governorships and senators and congressmen and so forth. But you're extremely well informed, and plus you have a great background, so you can bring it. And you've done things and you've made things happen. It's like when I was a Navy SEAL and the CIA, you don't get to that level unless you've done things, unless you can accomplish on a great level. So I feel that way about you. So I think that everyone should really get behind you and
thank
support
you.
Yeah. So
thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
I was going to say the reason that Rachel and I became friends, it was a unique set of circumstances, and it was really a God thing. And right away, I think her and I kind of connected, like I'll say cousins or something. She actually reminds me of my cousin that also lives down in Florida. But her heart and her connection with God, and that's why her and I are in business together as well for things that are going to help humanity. We don't need to get into that now, but
we can talk a little bit about it, Marcus, because I wanted to raise it. I'm glad you talked about it, because with regard to reserving our land and the preciousness of the ecosystems here in Florida, that's why I'm in God-based technologies. Now, we're not able to launch yet, but you can talk a little bit about that, because that's where my heart is, and I'm actually putting, what do they say, your money where your mouth is, my energy where my mouth is on that. So go ahead.
Yeah, and it's basically we put the company together as a sweat equity company called God-based technologies, and so we're really a startup. We've got two sets of technologies that we're in the midst of getting launched. One of them is called AquaZeo, and is our proprietary zeolite water purification system. We're primarily going to initially target homes with whole house units under the sink and RV, and then custom things for businesses. But the idea is to we know water, how contaminated it is with all the microplastics and the pharmaceutical chemicals and the PFAS chemicals that are in everything. And people are becoming more aware of it. We've got literally the best solution. It's economical as well, but it's the best solution for the purest water in the healthiest way that creates no downstream contaminant release problems. It's a phenomenal technology that we have. The other one is called Garbage to Gold, where we partnered with a friend of mine, and he's got a technology that's well proven, but it hasn't got into the market for several different reasons. But it can take regular solid municipal waste landfill garbage, and we can treat it with our proprietary microbes in the process that we have designed. And it will take regular landfill garbage and turn it into, reduce the volume, but it will turn it into good soil. I mean, like really good quality soil with none of the pathogens in it. And it's hard to kind of fathom, because you're talking about plastics and even, things that are in garbage you wouldn't think could be decomposed, but it actually works. And we torture tested by putting not real noxious toxic chemicals in, and we came out with no bad molecules left. So anyhow, we're trying to we can redo the garbage industry that creates jobs, has a good end product, solves all kinds of problems, is very healthy and economical for everybody. So yeah, Rachel has really been the legal mind in making us get everything completely right and in order. And it's been a long process, because we're all effectively volunteering sweat equity, but it's we get real things that are going to solve real problems and help real people. And Rachel's heart, we pray a lot of times after our meetings, and they're sincere. And I always ask Rachel, I want her to pray most of the time, because I like how she prays. But I was going to say, really, it's her character is the reason that we're friends, and because it's God is really, people don't know this, but She has got a lot on her plate, and God has uniquely provided her with energy and talent and skill and heart and endurance. And if there's not one person I don't think would understand at the foundational level what needs to happen that's running for governor, I'm sure there's a lot of great people, but boy, Rachel would be the best. She'd be the best one because her heart is in the right place and her brain is in the right place and her spirit is in the right place to really lead that state into something really good. And that would model for hopefully other governors across the country as well.
Yeah, I agree. I agree totally. That's great, Marcus. That sounds like incredible products that probably would help not just Florida on a massive scale, but every state and probably around the world. Now, before we leave, and Rachel, I'd love to have you say a prayer at the end, if you don't mind.
Sure. Okay.
So I want to have you guys. This is Rachel Rodriguez right here. I don't want to climb a political ladder. I'm running because Florida families deserve a governor who leads like Christ, self-sacrificing and identifying with their lives, and who will fight for their future. Beautiful.
Thank you. Well, I had a candidate call me this week, and it was a great conversation, and I had the opportunity, and that's exactly what I said. I said, are you willing to die every day for the people of Florida? Because that's what it's going to take. That's what I believe. And so this is an extraordinary opportunity. I have counted the cost. It's going to be very difficult. I also know that I'm trying to fundamentally change the structure and the goal points of how executive governance is done. But that's the faith that I have for it. I think it's what's needed. I'm looking around. I've been in the systems. I deal in a lot of different arenas because of the cases I take, and therefore I have to learn that area for the litigation, that area or that business or, whatever the issue is for my clients and for my advocacy work. And over and over and over again, what I see is fundamental structural corruption and problem. And I don't want to keep band-aiding over it. I want to say, and I don't want to scare people either. Fear sells, just like hope does, right? In fact, they go together. One says, oh, I'm going to scare you half to death so that I can sell you the hope. What I want to do instead is empower people and say, you are a moral agent created by God, and you are precious, and you need to know that. And you can stand up, and we can work together. And I believe that a leader is a visionary, not just somebody who is able to manage what's already existing, but somebody who has a vision for where we're headed. And in light of all the darkness that we've seen that you have suffered directly because of where you came from and now having to leave Florida again, it's easy to get stuck in that darkness and the difficulty and having to start over and over again. So better than just hope that just stands alone, I think it's better to have a vision. What is God's purpose for us? If we have value, what is it that we're to do? And I started thinking a lot more about that in the last 2 years, seeing that the COVID wrongs were not going to be righted by the people that are currently in the positions of power to do something. And I said, okay, then I've got to think bigger. How big is my God? That's how big I have to think. And so that's what I am presenting to the people of Florida. And I think it's scary because the vision I'm talking about is a blueprint that hasn't been seen before, at least not that I've seen. But it's not a utopia in the false and Marxist sense. It is an understanding of our design by the living God, our creator, and how to steward our land, how to steward ourselves and our resources, and how to enjoy the productivity that we've been given, and for everybody to honor one another in that. It's not enough, for example, to be tough on crime. Why is that happening in the first place? And how do we empower our communities to deal with that at the local level, to come alongside families and individuals that might be struggling with something? It's not the place of the government to be your mommy, but the government should not be coming in between the community that is walking and supporting one another, and the individual. So these are the things that I come to the table with a broad understanding of a lot of things. For example, you know, I'm a rule of law person, and I understand the Constitution, but I'm also an immigration attorney. So even as I'm enforcing law, I'm never going to forget that the people that are involved are human beings, and that we need to restore that vision of preciousness if we're going to move forward as a society.
Beautiful, beautiful. And would you like to lead us in prayer at the end here?
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lord God, we thank you for this opportunity. I thank you so much for Michael and for Marcus. I thank you for their lives and what they have committed to you, and all of their energy, their time, treasure, and talent that they provided to you. I pray that you would bless it, that it would prosper in their hands. I pray for all that are listening to this show or may listen in the future. I pray that you would bless them, that your spirit would touch them, and they would understand who you are and what you desire for them, that it is for their good and not for their harm. I thank you that you are in control and that you understand what is happening in Florida. It doesn't escape your notice. We ask for your mercy over the state, and we pray for godly leadership in place. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Beautiful. Marcus and Rachel, fabulous show. I'm sure this is going to reach a lot of people, touch a lot of people.
Great.
And
Thank you.
again, guys, you know, definitely Rachel for gov.com and donate if you can. If not, just share the link and share the show. I think everyone needs to see this show that's in America right now. This show is going to like bust everything open, I think. So.
All right, let's go.
Yeah. So thanks
I knew
so much.
you'd like the Rachel.
Yep, she's amazing. Absolutely amazing. We need amazing people in positions like you talked about that are resistant to that. So I hope you get in that position, and we're going to support you however we can. So thanks so much, guys.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Rachel.